right now. Because he says I am. How'd that feel? How did it feel? Yeah? Is it a little weird? Yeah. It's disruptive. It's disruptive to what we know. It's disruptive, if we're honest, to what we actually believe. The only thing you need to lack nothing right now is for the Lord to be your shepherd. That's it. And you may be saying, well, here's the thing. I legitimately, factually lack a lot. Like, is this just like being in denial or like kind of like name it and claim it or like ignoring stuff and sugarcoating it? And that's a fair question. So Jesus and his disciples stood in a massive crowd of more than 10,000 people who were hungry with zero access to food for days. And Jesus told his disciples to feed the crowds. It's a one bagel for the whole church kind of situation, right? And what did the disciples do? They freaked out. They freaked out. All the food the disciples had brought was three loaves and 5 fish, or 3 fish and 5 loaves, which was just enough to feed themselves. Their immediate response was a scarcity mentality. And to be fair, there actually was scarcity. There actually was factually not enough food to feed 10,000 people. They looked at Jesus and they were like, we lack, like substantially, Jesus. Don't you see that? And Jesus told them to give him the little that they had, and he multiplied it and multiplied it and multiplied it until there was so much food, there were 12 baskets left over. I think we're so used to looking down to only seeing our own limitations. And Jesus says to us, lift up your head. Look to me. Whatever lack you place in my hands, whatever little you trust me with, I will transform it into more than enough. Not because of who you are or what you have, but because of who I am. Jesus is saying, I am healer, I am savior, I am provider. And because you are mine, you lack nothing. And just as the disciples saw real quick what God could do, David in a cave, in hiding, surrounded by enemies who wanted to kill him, abandoned by his family, David saw the truth. He lacked nothing because of who he belonged to. And here's the thing. Jesus can get us out of the grave really easily. All we have to do is disrupt the scarcity mentality that says we don't have enough and say, nope, scarcity, you're not shepherding me. Jesus is shepherding me. And the truth is, I lack nothing. Just a tiny bit of faith, that's it. But getting the grave out of our heart and mind, that's a process. And so the journey that Jesus is taking us onto is healing our wounded hearts. And at every single step of that journey, we are going to have to make the choice over and over and over again. He is going to bring us to a crossroads every step of this journey. And each time, we're going to have to choose, will I allow him to shepherd me? Is the Lord going to be the shepherd of my life? And if you choose that, that means he is going to determine the way. He is going to determine the way, not our past, our trauma, or our circumstances, or our bank account. And the second choice, every single time he's going to take us onto a new part of this path, is we're going to have to choose to allow him to define what is true. And what is true is that you lack nothing. And so already this is like really the opposite of what we're used to. This is really different. This is really disruptive. But it gets so much better. Are you ready? Yeah, I am too. He makes me lie down in fresh green pastures. He leads me beside quiet and restful waters. So the Good Shepherd invites us to follow him into rest. Everyone say rest. How does that feel? How does it feel to know that that's the first stop on this trip is rest? Does it feel good? I think we're all kind of like, yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I totally want to go into rest. Band also, raise your hand if you struggle to rest. Everyone, every single, we all struggle to rest. Because here's the biggest problem, I think, with our struggle to rest. We're like, oh, Jesus, give me rest. Oh, take me on this journey of rest. But our identities are so tightly wrapped into what we do that when we cease doing, we feel guilty. Anyone feel guilty when you rest? Yeah. Anyone feel restless? Restless, like I cannot just sit here. I got it. Laundry. Yep, or whatever. Go do the yard. Or you feel like you don't have a purpose. This is a waste of time. I need to be productive. I need to be doing something that matters. And so real rest is impossible. Am I preaching this morning? Yeah, you know I'm telling the truth. You all know it. And so here's the thing. The belief that we must constantly be doing, working and producing, is a scarcity mentality. So if any of you just struggled with rest, guess what? We struggle with a scarcity mentality. And you want to know what the fruit of a scarcity mentality is? A yoke of slavery. A yoke of slavery. Even if you have a day off, let's get real, you're running errands, you're checking lists, you're getting stuff done. You're just not getting paid for it. And so we work 7 days a week. And okay, so what do you call it? You tell me, what do you call it when you work 7 days a week with no days off and no rest? What is that? That's slavery. That's slavery. Jesus said in Matthew 11:28 through 30, are you tired? Are you? You can answer. Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and I'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you will learn to live freely and lightly. So, if the Lord is our shepherd, and he's defining the way we go, and we're allowing him to define what is true, which is that we lack nothing, the next choice we have to make is, will we allow him to shepherd us into his rest and to watch and learn his way of resting and not our own? Everyone say, his way, not mine.
His way, not mine.
Ooh. But what does that mean? Are you ready to be disrupted? Are you ready? Okay, that's okay if you're not. I get it. From the beginning of creation, God has built in really specific divine parameters and boundaries. He has built in divine rhythms of grace to protect us from a yoke of slavery. God has a very special name for this divine boundary that he has set. It is called Shabbat, or the Sabbath. Everyone say Shabbat. And this is a word that means a day of rest. Everyone repeat after me, day of rest.
Day of rest.
So, from the beginning, God has built into creation this seventh day. And a lot of people think that like people were the culmination of God's creation. I disagree with that. I believe the seventh day, Shabbat, the day of rest, was the culmination of creation. I believe it was the crown that God put upon all of creation, calling it good. God literally made Adam and Eve, and their very first day on the earth was the seventh day. It was Shabbat rest. And God said for his people to set this day apart from all the other days as sacred and special. A 24-hour period of time where there are no lists, no chores, no errands, no appointments. Where we lay it all down. We lay the doing down just to be. And not just 2 weeks on a vacation, and not just whenever we're so burnt out that we're sick as a dog and we don't have a choice, but that we are to intentionally have a rhythm of rest and returning into his rest every single week. So to set us free, Jesus is inviting us into a new way that is radically different than what we have ever done before. It is countercultural. It is meant to be disruptive to our lives. It is meant to make us uncomfortable. Because God's people were always meant from the beginning to look different from the rest of the world. A slavery mentality is the world. That is not what God has called us to. It's not who he's made us to be. And so this is an invitation, this disruption, this invitation into the rhythm of Shabbat rest is an invitation to reorient our lives around him and not our fear. And how many of you, honestly, if we're honest, we can be real because that's what we do here. We are a church that is real. When I said a 24-hour period of time where you can do nothing productive, how many of you immediately thought, that's not possible, there's no way, I don't have time for that? Anybody? Anybody brave enough to be honest? Let's be aware of that scarcity mentality, because the world has convinced us that that is not possible. But that is not what God says is true. So who are we allowing to shepherd us? It's hard because we can't rest because we're afraid. And this reminds me of when Jesus and his disciples were in the midst of a storm in a boat. They were on the Sea of Galilee. They were crossing to the other side. This huge storm sweeps in. And Jesus is sleeping on the boat in the middle of this huge storm. And the disciples are like, seriously? Get up. Don't you realize we're all about to die? But the thing is, Jesus knew they weren't going to die because they were with him. But they didn't know that. And I think that if we walk away from that story about Jesus with the lesson of that story is God calms all the storms in our life, we have missed the point of what Jesus was doing. God is not going to calm all the storms in our life. It's not going to happen. Life is going to happen. It's like living in the Midwest and being like, God, make it stop raining. It's not going to happen, y'all. It rains 8 months out of the year here. That's the reality. The lesson in that story was that Jesus wanted to teach his disciples to sleep in the boat with him, to give them the peace, to give them quiet, calm waters on the inside, regardless of what was going on around them. And this is what the day of rest is all about. It is learning how to sleep in the boat in the midst of the storm. They had to be taught, and so do we. Jesus teaches us. And when we lay down in green pastures and quiet, calm waters, something beautiful begins to happen. David writes in verse 3, he restores my soul. Now that word, restore in the Hebrew, is incredibly profound. Are you ready for what this word restore means? Because this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. It means to return what was lost, to repair what is broken, to refresh what is withered, to gather what is scattered, to give back what was stolen, to put right what was wronged, to pay the debt that is owed, and to resurrect what is dead. But it gets even better, because the word for soul, he restores my soul. In the Hebrew, it mentions our will and desires and our character and personality. So basically, this teeny tiny little verse has enormous implications. God is the restorer, and part of this rescue mission is about restoring, returning, repairing, refreshing, gathering, and resurrecting who you are. It is a reclaiming of your identity, the thing that your woundedness and that scarcity has stolen. When we are simply doing nothing, we are perfectly delighted in by God. In the rest, we discover who we really are, and it's not a slave. It is his beloved children of God. The Jews have this really special greeting that they give to one another on the Sabbath. It's Shabbat Shalom. Everyone say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Now, Shabbat, as we've already said, means a day of rest. But Shalom means wholeness. Nothing missing, nothing broken. Does that sound familiar? I lack nothing. So when they would greet each other, Shabbat Shalom, they were saying, happy day of resting in wholeness. Wonderful day of nothing missing and nothing broken. And you see, the gift of Shabbat is shalom, wholeness. It's a gift. God never meant for this seventh day to be a burden, but a blessing to us, to set us free. In the Shabbat rest, we learn we lack nothing. And if you want shalom, wholeness, to go from your head to your heart, you must enter into his Shabbat rest. And this is a hard truth. This is disruptive. If you want shalom, wholeness, you have to enter into Shabbat rest. There is no shalom without Shabbat. Repeat after me. There is no shalom without Shabbat.
There is no shalom without Shabbat.
Jeremiah 6:16 through 20 says, I stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it. And you will find rest for your souls. But you said, we will not walk in it. So, my own story with Shabbat is probably very similar as all of us. I was just constantly living in these cycles of burnout. Over and over again, I would put way, way, way too much on my plate, say yes to everything, doing everything, and a lot of it was good stuff. A lot of it was ministry stuff. I was serving God, right? But way too busy to actually enter into rest with him. And it's like I was saying to God, like, I'm so super deeply wounded. God, restore me, make me whole, bring me healing. And I'm like in the middle of running a marathon. I'm bleeding out, but can you like bind me up real quick while I get a real quick sip of water? That's what it's like. That's the way that I was living my life. And we know logically that like healing our physical bodies comes with rest. When we're sick, we need to rest. And we somehow think, though, that that same thing doesn't apply to our soul. And so God basically sort of forced me into a season of Shabbat rest. My body had had enough. It was exhausted, and it started to wear down, so much so to where I couldn't even go back to work. And it was only after that where I started observing Shabbat every single week, from Friday evening until Saturday evening. I felt God's call to enter into his rest. Rachel, you've got to learn how to rest. The way you are living your life is not sustainable. You are not a slave. And so I was like, okay, Lord, I'm going to be faithful. And I started observing Shabbat. No phone, turned it off. No nothing, no movies, no TV, no distractions, no work, no laundry, no lists, no errands, nothing. The only thing I was allowed to do on Shabbat was to delight. It was just to whatever brought me joy and excitement and fun. That was it. And so it's almost been about a year now. And my life, I can't even describe it. My life has completely changed. God has completely rewired my brain. Every single week, I would be busy, carrying the yoke of slavery, and then I would stop, take off the yoke of slavery, put on the yoke of rest. And then immediately, Saturday evening, get all the laundry done, get all the stuff done, put the yoke right back on. And it was weeks of this, entering into this rhythm over and over and over again. God disrupting that scarcity mentality, disrupting the slavery, and inviting me into freedom and rest. Until at some point, I don't even remember when it was, I realized that I didn't have to put the yoke of slavery back on. And something began to happen to me where I started to let things go. I started to not care about wiping every crumb on the counter or getting every single thing on the list done. Or it's like I was just being released in every single area of my life. And now I can't even imagine my life without Shabbat. I will never go back to life without Shabbat because that is literally the life of a slave. And God has set me free. But that took a really long time to get me there. He kept inviting me into rest, and I would not walk in it. And I think the thing was, I didn't really know who he was. And it was in the Shabbat rest where he taught me who he was. He taught me that he's good. He taught me that he's kind. He taught me that it's okay if I stop. And if I stop and I don't get all the things done, that the world is not going to fall apart. The laundry will get done, just not on Shabbat. The car will get cleaned out, just not on Shabbat. And it gave me this grace, this unforced rhythm of grace where I could just be. He leads me down good and right paths for the sake of his name. This is a good and right path. Shabbat is where he's leading us, not only to restore who we are, but to show us who he really is. And that is, he is the good shepherd. He does not expect you to be this well-oiled machine that never stops. He did not make us to be machines. That is so dehumanizing, and if we think of ourselves that way. God made us to be these well-watered gardens that need tending. Anyone had a garden? Gardens need tending. They need care. They need water. They need fresh soil. They need to be pruned. We need to be tended. And he is this incredible gardener that wants to do all of that if we will just allow him to, if we will give him the space and the margin to. Scarcity says that all we'll ever be able to do is scrape out a living, trapped in a tomb. What's dead is dead, and that there's no hope. You're just a slave. But Jesus says, I have come that you may have life. Life to the full, to enjoy, to delight, to have fun, to be whole, to be healed, and to be restored. And that is who you really are. And so this morning, as we close our eyes, I just want to ask to really examine your heart this morning and ask you right now in this moment, what would it be like to surrender to the Good Shepherd? To allow him to define what is true. That you lack nothing right now. And what would it look like if you chose to follow into his way of rest and to not your own? So Lord Jesus, I want to pray over us this morning. God, we cry out for shalom, wholeness, and healing and restoration. And yet, we struggle to enter into your Shabbat rest. And so, Lord, let us be a people that follow you anywhere that you go, whatever way you're going, God. We want to go the way you are going. God, we are tired. I am tired. My brothers and sisters are tired of this scarcity mentality that controls every decision we make, that defines who we are, that defines what our life should look like. Lord, I'm tired of living a life where I'm constantly trying to keep up with the lack and I can just never do it. So God, we just pray that you would soften our hearts. God, that we would make the choice that you are our shepherd. that we lack nothing. And that we want you to teach us that in Shabbat rest. God, we know that there is no shalom without Shabbat. And so, Lord, give us the courage to make the decisions we need to make, to honor you, to honor your word, so that we can be free, truly freed to live the abundant life that you have come to give us. And I just pray all of this in your name. Amen. If you would stand with me. And just put out your hands and receive this blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you his shalom.
Wasn't that